Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday the 10th of November comes to you from New York. And we start by looking at the dollar, and we see here that the dollar is below the cloud here on the short-term chart. We had a bad day yesterday for the dollar. This is the dollar index, remember, so it's positioned against a basket of major currencies, and we see here that it is just turning around on the middle on the lagging line here on the chart on the medium term horizon. So we may see a short-term transition because the prices are well and truly out, but we need a recovery in the dollar for that to happen in the short term. But there is a shortage of downside targets short term, so it looks like this might be short-lived. Looking at the euro, we see here euro strengthening as well, but no clear upside targets on the 60-minute chart. We do have a downside target if we move lower to 114. Looking at the yen, we see here dollar weakness against the yen as well, but there's lots of 4 upside targets around 2 and 3%, so it does suggest that the dollar will break and go higher because we've got multiple targets pointing to that. Looking at sterling, sterling looking a bit stronger here against the dollar, but we've got targets in both directions indicating the uncertainty really surrounding sterling with Brexit. And we're seeing here this again with the euro, sterling looking stronger, having found some good support here in the short-term chart, but the picture is still mixed here on the medium-term targets in both directions. Of course, the long-term picture is still bearish for sterling. Taking a look at the Swiss franc, sterling still looking a little bit bearish here in the short term, and against the Aussie dollar just recovering above the cloud. The S&P 500 index was down by 10 points last night, and the NatGas was down 0.5%. So we are just seeing a retracement in the markets, but still looking bullish in all 3 time frames. The Dow also came off quite significantly, about 0.4%, down 100 points. But 100 points these days on the Dow is not a great amount, given that we're at 23,000. But we are just seeing here, we're holding on to the bullishness. The Russell 2000 has been looking bearish this week, so we are seeing that it's not broad-based across US equities at the moment. The S&P 500 future down 0.3% suggests we'll open lower this morning, and the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.3% as well, suggesting again that we will open lower, and these charts are starting to look a little bit more bearish in the short term. Looking at the FTSE 100, bearish here as well, down 0.5% at the moment. So a bad end to the week for the UK market. We're just seeing here a real sort of sell-off. So just really struggling to hold this 7,500 level back below that now. And the FTSE 250 again looking pretty bearish here, but a shortage of clear downside targets all around, so not really easy to call a bottom here, just looks like a retracement. And the DAX also looking a bit bearish as well, having sold off significantly this week as well. The Nikkei sold off a bit overnight, down 0.8%, so we are just seeing that lower. And the Hang Seng down very slightly. Shanghai also bucking the trend, just up a little bit. And the Indian market up 0.2%, also bucking the trend there. Australian market down 1/3%, so just a little bit weaker, but has had an amazing run the last several weeks. And if we look at Brent Crude, just sitting at the $64 level at the moment, just hitting 64 as I speak. So Brent really starting to hit into these mid-60s, really uncharacteristically strong for this time of year. Normally this is the time of year where we see crude oil falling. WTI also fairly flat as well. US NatGas holding that 320 level, so just touching 320 now, so looking stronger there as well. And copper, having had a bearish week, is still just below the cloud, looking a little bit more bearish short term, but the medium and long term chart still very bullish. Gold sitting in the mid 280s, so looking bullish on the short term chart. And the medium and long term charts just still holding the bull trends just, and silver also looking just not quite as clearly bullish on the short term chart, and the long term still for silver not quite as clear. US Treasury yield sitting at 2.37%. More bullish comments from one of the Fed board members last night. We're seeing sentiment for rises in US interest rates creeping in here, and consequently the rate has moved from the low 230s to the high 230s. Apple sold off 0.2% overnight. Google was down 0.8%, still looking strong on all three time frames, as is Amazon, down 1/3%. Facebook was just down only 0.14% and still looking strong on all three time frames. And Microsoft down 0.5%, but still looking very strong on the charts here, having held on to the gains that we saw a couple of weeks ago. That's it for today. Until Monday, have a great weekend. Happy charting. See you then.